The good folks who are tuning in, let them know what we are doing today.
Yeah. Today is episode three,
Yep.
episode three of the Albert Wynn and Way Hangout Show. Um, we got together, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago, getting caught up on a number of things. And in the middle of the conversation, we decided that we were spitting such wonderful nuggets of wisdom that we just needed to record it and send it out. Or in other words, put something out there so that we can watch it again and discover how lame we were. Uh, but this is where we are now. We've had a number of topics, and we take turns picking the topics. I think what was last week? Last week was, uh,
Dude, I literally have the memory like of a baby
yeah, I
squirrel
know, right?
at
I
this
can't.
point. It's a good episode though. You should definitely check it out.
Yeah, right. But this week, for a number of reasons, school starting up, and Wei was kind enough to ask me to join in on a couple of things, and I just wasn't able to make some deadlines. And out of my own frustration, I decided that today's topic was going to be realistic deadlines
Yeah.
because this guy sucks at it. So
I don't.
we'll be we're going to tell on one another. I'm going to tell on myself, and then you're going to tell me how you do it, and I'll write it down, and I'll get better.
Well, I don't think anyone
That's how that
says
works.
that I'm perfect at deadlines, and I never have any trouble hitting deadlines. But I will say that I'm much better at it now than I was, say, 10 years ago. So maybe we can. What ends up happening, the reason why we're doing this show for everyone who might be tuning in, and if you're coming in the show right now and you're watching, please let us know where you're watching from. Just say hi. We're coming out on Facebook and YouTube, and if you're catching this after the fact, we'll see all those comments come back through. So just say hi, let us know that you're watching, and appreciate those of you who have been sending all the nice comments after the fact. But what happens was when Albert and I talk, we end up being each other's sounding board, and what I've mentioned in the previous episodes is that this little ping pong effect happens, and as we ping pong things back and forth, we're like, oh, that's cool. Like little things that Albert will say will kind of sit with me in the back of my mind, and then we know that when you're learning something, it's the hearing of something, but it isn't until you actually apply it to something that you're actually like really learning it. And so that happens to me often enough to where I say, let's capture this, let's share it. If nothing else, it'll be a reminder for us when we see it later,
Yeah.
and we'll interpret it in the context that we're in 3 years down the road. But maybe this will be helpful and useful for someone else who's listening. So, okay, so setting realistic deadlines. Do you want to tell, you want to set a scene? What's an application where you encounter the struggle of hitting that deadline?
Oh, every day. Uh, well, let's see. I'd have a hard time saying no. That's the bottom line. And I know where I misstep, so I can find myself regularly, because I want to make sure that I help my colleagues. And there are a lot of things that I want to do. I have a lot of interests. And so this falls under two categories. One category is like personal deadlines for myself, things that I want to do. And then the other one is deadlines that I have given other people. And I think, as in, I told them that I would have it done at X time, not that I gave them a deadline for something, to be really clear. And so I find myself in that second category, the deadlines that I've imposed on myself when I tell someone that I was going to have something done at X day, at X time. Those are the ones that I struggle with, and that's a I just don't take a beat really to realize how busy I actually am. I think ultimately that's what it boils down to. And if I would just take a second and evaluate all of the things that I have to do, and how much time I need to do things, I wouldn't find myself in that situation. And so I think for now, I know why it happens. I just need to get out of the habit of doing it. And it's just frustrating. I mean, 43 years old and still not being able to meet the deadlines you set for yourself, that's pretty terrible. So um, they're becoming less frequent, but it's something that still makes me mad. So,
Mm.
yeah. So really no scene other than how they sort of unfold in my mind. Like I know how I get there.
Mm.
How about you? What What are
Um,
your scenarios and how does it sort of work out for you?
so there are kind of like two phases that I might group this into. Phase one being the college undergrad, and this is the advice that I always would give my high school juniors and seniors that would say like, "Hey, I'm going to go study music," and I'd be like, "Are you sure?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, I have to." I'm like, "Are you sure?" And they say like, "Yeah, I'm going to do it." I'm like, "Okay, if you're going to do it, here's the deal." And this is kind of the approach that I took when I was an undergrad, and it worked for me. And I'm not saying that it will work for everybody. It depends on the scenario, but the advice that I would always give is you take every single opportunity that it comes across your plate, no matter what. And maybe that's where we start to develop that habit of like not being able to say no. But it's
I think you're
super,
right.
yeah, but it's super important when you're an undergrad because you will never have more time then ever again than that period of your life. You think you're busy. Like I remember undergrad Huei, and I remember being like, "Oh man, I'm so busy." I'm like, "Dude, just calm down, all right? You're fine."
Right,
And
right.
and so you have to log the hours and get as many of those diverse experiences as you can so that as you have less time and you do have to be more selective, you've honed the chops to do whatever you're being asked to do later down the road.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that for undergrads?
Well, I mean, I think that's true. You know, it's you kind of have to take on as much water as you can without sinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think it matter. I mean, every profession you want to enter into, you sort of have to take that approach at the undergrad level because it is so general. You know, you're not going to get these classes that are so hyper focused in one direction, and then even then, you may not know clearly what direction you want to go, and so you sort of have to hit the buffet plate and sample all of the things, play in all the ensembles,
Mm-hmm.
take all of the classes, make the people that are better than you your friends so
Mm-hmm.
that you can grow from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is part of the undergrad experience that is important. Um, I I would add an amendment to this overall thought now, though, primarily because I see a lot of issues with mental health and
Mm-hmm.
stress
Yeah.
with the students that I teach,
Yeah.
is that you have to understand where your threshold is. That's the hard part. And when you're young and as an undergrad, you may not know. And I'm pretty sure I went through phases of major depression or high anxiety, um, but I wasn't taught to recognize it
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as what it was. And I think, especially now more than ever, that's probably one of the things that they should learn. Like I really think part of like some kind of freshman orientation is like maybe a 9 month 9 week seminar on mental health and how to recognize problems when they start to arise and how to handle them and then maybe have check-ins. I mean, a lot of that is pretty heavy on my mind, particularly with everything that we're going through. And so, like the mental state of my students in general, that's something that I think about a lot. I mean, to the point where we had a mental health expert come talk to our marching band, and that's when it
Cool.
really came together. It's like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of this stuff that I wish I would have known then. And so it is the very thin line, I think, between do everything you can to grow, 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 but not so much that you break,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start to step really far back and retreat. And I see that. And the result of that is probably um, students who don't understand what a threshold is. Another issue is the power dynamic between a professor and a student.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, so and so said I have to do this. Okay, great, I'll do it. But then another person I respect says I have to do this. Oh, okay, great, I do it. And then and next thing you know, you're in the corner crying because it's 4 a.m. and you didn't finish your research paper because you spent, you know, your time at this one gig, and then you had to practice for your jury, and then you got the paper to write, and you did none of it really well. So it's tough. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I mean, I as in digest as much as you can.
Yeah.
But I think the caveat would be recognize what overload looks like, and then try to manage that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we hear these words like self-care,
Yep.
um, and understanding one's threshold. I mean, all of those are important. Um, but you know, you just have to find that information and have someone guide you through it. I am certainly a proponent of therapy. I mean, I think it's great. So, yeah.
That's tough. I'm that is not a strength of mine, or my awareness for that. I don't think I had an awareness for that, honestly, when I was an undergrad. It's just like, just go, man, just go, 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 go. So,
Hmm.
um, I not that I can't empathize with that, but it wasn't something that I had to deal with myself. So I'm glad you're mentioning it, because it's easy for me to sometimes forget to add that, or admittedly, I have forgotten to add that amendment. So I think that's a really great point to highlight for people.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a different threshold.
There was a term that was used by this mental health specialist. Um, Everyone has a threshold on how much they can handle, and then there are also people who are considered high functioning, and I would throw you in that category. Someone who is able to operate and tolerate a high level of stress, but still function at a very high level. Um, and I think I was there. You know, I mean, I think about all of the things that I was able to do in the one 24-hour day. I mean, pulling all-nighters to get stuff done. I mean, all of that, it was a reality for me, you know, practicing at 11:30 p.m. and hiding so that I could stay in the practice room until and leave on my own time, not when they were shutting down the building. You know, I mean, that kind of thing is normal. But I don't know. I mean, maybe because the world is more stressful. I mean, and I don't mind talking about this because maybe other people will have been there. And I don't know if you know this, but I used to think that I would just have to work through it and just develop a plan and make it happen for me. And if it didn't happen, it's because I didn't work hard enough. Or if I'm stressed out, then it's because I didn't plan well enough. I didn't even consider volume, you know, until I had my first mental breakdown, and that was intense, literally. And I didn't even know what it was until someone else who suffers from anxiety basically said, "This is what's happening to you." I'm like, "No, it's not. I'm just fine." You know. But yeah, it
When was this?
was
When did this
there.
happen?
I had just gotten the director of bands. We had um, gotten a bid. We got accepted to perform CBD Day Regional. I was leaving the Catholic Church. There were some things going on at work also that were really stressful. Um, and I was learning, you know, the job.
Hmm.
And then the ensemble was getting ready to be placed on a national platform.
Yep.
And I just found myself making one dumb decision after another, and then realizing the landscape in front of me was almost unattainable. And uh, the where it really started to manifest itself was, I mean, I remember not the day as in the date. I could go back and point to it because it was I realized how stressed out I was, and it finally broke me on in December, and it was commencement. I realized that Amy and I were going on a cruise with her folks, and there was the airline ticket was booked, and all of the stuff was booked, and I, in my mind, had all of those events a day later. Poor planning. And then I realized it was not the case at all, that the plane was going to be leaving that night. It was the last plane out of Memphis to Orlando. And if I missed it because commencement ran long, then I was driving all night long to Orlando so that we could make boat and make the call for the boat at 11 a.m. the next day. And that moment right there
Yeah.
was when I experienced my first full-blown panic attack. Cold sweats, freaking out. I couldn't think. I couldn't do anything. I was just bugging out. Thought I was going to die. I mean, it was complete. I was a complete train wreck. I couldn't. All I did was obsess about commencement and making everything work. But what did I do? I moved into planning mode. I got up at 4 in the morning and called the airline to see if I could check my bags first. I called a friend and had them pick up Amy and meet me right at the gate of the commencement facility, so that and Amy dropped me off at the commencement. So all I needed to do was walk out, get on, drive to the airport, get dropped off, and then go. And in the end, it all worked out. I even had a backup if I had to leave the commencement in the middle of it just to make the plane. I mean, just the plan itself made it work, but it was crazy. So we get on the boat, and like every 30 minutes, I would just sweat, cold sweats,
Yep.
like crazy. Couldn't eat, and I eat like a horse. Couldn't eat, couldn't do any of those things. And that's when that's when I knew what was going on. I'm breaking.
I actually,
and I went and sought help.
yeah, I can point to a similar feeling in that traveling bit. So early when I used to travel, I think it started because of auditioning and being in drum corps, like flying once a month, kind of earlier than most people start traveling, I think maybe. But I was the guy that would roll up to the gate 10 minutes before it would close and be like, oh, I've got plenty of time. I've got 10 minutes till the doors close, it's laughable now looking back on it, because that is the opposite of my wife, who likes to be there 2 hours beforehand. And I'd always be like, why are we here 2 hours early? Like we're wasting 2 hours of time. And what I would say now is, like, we have 2 hours of peace of mind and not having to freak out leading up to it, and then not being able to enjoy it because you're still so stressed out from everything that led up to it. For me, there was an instance where I didn't realize it was like an anxiety attack, which I haven't had anxiety for the most part growing up. But there was a situation once where I was flying somewhere to be the guest clinician on a concert for the following day. So I was getting in that afternoon, rehearsing with the students, like 3 to 9 or something, and then maybe doing master classes the next day, and then there was an evening concert the next night. And if I missed this flight, I would basically blow all the rehearsals that were supposed to be planned for that day, and then hopefully get in for the master class, which would then not be able to happen because we'd have to throw together the concert for that evening. So, I mean, it's, as I'm even talking about now, I haven't thought about it in a long time. As I'm talking about it, it's a sign of, maturing that needs to take place that I did. But I get to the airport, and I'm literally like, it's one of those scenarios where everything has to be perfect in order to make it. Which, like, why would you ever put yourself in that scenario?
I know. Well,
why did you do this to yourself?
The young versions of ourselves did that all the time.
Yeah, you're like, oh, it's going to work out. Nothing will go wrong. Whereas now it's like, here are the 20 things that could wrong, and here are the 40 backup plans that we have.
100%. Yes. We have evolved.
Yeah, exactly. So there was this moment. Okay, and so my breaking point moment in this story is, this is in Chicago. So I'm at O'Hare, and I'm on the tram thing that takes you from the parking lot to the airport. Like, now I would have gotten a car, and I wouldn't be parking my car at some remote lot to take. Again, what are you doing? You're a mess, man. So I'm on the tram, and I think I'm maybe flying United, and it's one of those situations where they're flying out of 2 terminals. And so I don't realize this until maybe 45 seconds before we're getting to the first terminal. And this is the first juncture where it's like, I have to figure out, is it terminal 2 or terminal 3 in the next 45 seconds? Because if I don't get off now and it was this, or if I get off early and I have to catch the next train, like, I'm going to blow it.
Yep.
It's going to, like, either the trip is going to happen or not in the next 45 seconds. And I'm realizing all of this in the span of 10 seconds, probably the same way that you realize that you were leaving, like, the next night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so somehow I figure it out. Somehow it works out. But I'm on the train and, like, the room starts spinning a little bit. And I basically, I think I have an anxiety attack at this moment where, you know, and I like remember somehow getting onto the plane and sitting down. But it was the same thing where, like, I sat down and I was like I couldn't catch my breath. I was just like, whoa, what is going on? What is going on? And I didn't know, because I hadn't recognized this feeling before. That
Yeah.
that was the last time I ever rushed to a flight. Ever since then, I've been the guy that gets there 2 hours early now.
Well, I'm on that. I'm on that train, man.
Yeah.
I do that. But there's just I don't know, man. There's just something about how we humans can drive ourselves to that point, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where it's really thin rubber and complete fumes,
Yeah.
and we still want to just keep going. And that's what I've learned through all of it. That was probably the beginning of my journey,
Mm.
when it was, wait a minute, Albert, you can't say yes to everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, part of it was, gosh, I have to get tenure. This is a tenure track position, and I can't say no to all the gigs, and I mean, on and on. They just keep piling on and on and on, and it's so dangerous. And that's what the you know, I don't see a therapist anymore, but when I did, those were the things that this nonpartisan partner in my mental healing was really successful at helping me with. You know, it was just, I needed someone who had no stake in my success whatsoever to shoot me straight, and he did, and it was awesome. Yeah, but I think that's when I realized that, you know, Albert Wynn can't always be a yes man, because if I care about quality of work, if I care about quality of life, if I care to stay married, if I want to be able to really, you know, study the music that I'm studying deeply to do what I'm supposed to do, I have to say no to some things to protect my time. And I have to set deadlines that are actually realistic, because if they're not realistic, and what I mean by that is if they don't consider the amount of work that I've already scheduled for myself, what ends up happening is I stress myself out, and I do things like text you in the middle of the night saying, dude, it's not going to happen, I'm so sorry. But even then, that is a positive thing, because there would have been a time where I would have never have sent a text like that, or an email or a phone call like that, and I would have stayed up all night to make it happen.
Yeah.
And it would have been terrible. And then that thing that I made would have represented me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I forced to stick to a deadline. And, you know, and then, so now that I assign, if meeting the deadline results in the degradation of the quality, I really have to think about whether or not that deadline is important. And I have to fess up, you know, and that's what that was. It's like, I could already tell, and that was Saturday, I think, when I sent that to you.
Yeah.
I could just tell that there was no way.
Yeah, there are too many other things.
You're
looking at the list and you're like, okay, yeah, that's not going to happen with the amount of time that I have.
No, no. And again, that was a skill that I learned from the therapist, and from things that I've read about stress management and goal management, and, you know, the to-do management. It's just a matter. There are things that can change. There are things that can slide, and allow them to. You know, there are things that can't. You have to eat.
So
You have to sleep,
let's
you know.
wrap this
Uh,
first part and take it into the second part, because I think you're describing now the second part, which is we're in phase one where you're saying yes to everything so you can develop the chops and the experience to then be able to say no to everything else later, because then you're going to know what you want to do, and you have the either the authority or the luxury of picking and choosing where you spend your time. So I will say one benefit of this undergrad scenario that maybe we start to lose as we get out into the real world is that you're in this little cocoon, this bubble. You're surrounded by people who care about you. You're hopefully your friends, your family, your professors, some sort of support network. And you alluded this to that when you were describing your travel story, which is not being afraid to ask for friends' help, which I was really bad at growing up. You know, it's just like you want to just do it as much as possible. And one thing that I've gotten much better at is just like asking for help, because I find that most people are very happy to help, but
right.
you have to verbalize it first. Um, so when you get older, you have more responsibilities. Um, that asking to help bit really came in. This was actually maybe one of the piece of advice that really stuck out to me when we first had our first, our only, but our first child, our daughter. And someone said, going into it, they're like, you know, you're going to want to do everything yourself because it's your first kid and you're going to want to do everything. But when someone offers to watch them or do something, like, say yes and take that hour to go take a shower or have a meal or do something so that you can become a human again, because it's just going to, you're going to get hit by a truck, you know, that first month. And so don't be too proud to accept help when people offer it.
Yeah, yeah. That must be part of new parent advice 101, you know, because that's what I think about. That was certainly some of the best advice that I received
Mm-hmm.
as a young parent, as a new parent.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and I think you know, you and I think relatively speaking to perhaps the mean of where people have children in this country age-wise, we're probably on the older side of it, I think. And I attribute my willingness to receive help for things like that to where how I was able to mature in asking for help in my career, and so I'm thankful for that. You know, I'm thankful for the people who are like, you guys go on a date because you haven't, and go take a bath because you stink. By the way, there's like dried milk on your shirt,
Right.
you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for the people like that in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, you're right. You're in that hustle phase,
Mm-hmm.
and then once you get out of that hustle phase, you evolve into not a, I don't know, it's like surgical, you know, it's like I want to spend time here. Then I'm going to spend time here. In between here, here and here. I don't know how I don't know how you have derived at that, but I think for me it's um, less things have become more important.
Yeah.
You
For
know,
sure, man. It's
like
pretty clear what's
like
important when.
the things that should be important in my life, like they've those things have come up and they're the solid parts. And then everything else, eh, you know, like there's a book. What is it? How to it uses the F word. What is
This
it?
seems like would be a really
The
memorable title.
the art of not giving an
Yeah,
F. Is that what
I
it
think so.
is?
I think I've seen. I haven't read it, but I think I
Yeah.
remember seeing
I
that.
mean, it's not a horrible book, and I started it and I committed to going all the way through it. Um, and I that's the big thing that I learned. You know, it's like the thing that you give an F about, the person that just blew you up about it, they may not have the same amount of care as you do. So stop worrying about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or does this thing really deserve that amount of attention versus this other thing that actually does deserve that amount of attention?
Mm-hmm.
And so my takeaway was, prioritizing mental energy.
Yeah.
And then it evolved to then what I wanted to spend my mental energy
Mm-hmm.
on, which is I think what you were getting at.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
For sure. That the mental energy component, this is something that I think the first time I started becoming aware of this, when you're younger, you just think you're a machine. You can go, 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 go. You don't realize that you're human and that the work output is affected by all these human things. Have you eaten? Have you slept? And like when you're younger, you can pull an all-nighter and you wake up the next day and maybe you take a nap and you're fine. If I stay up all night for anything now, I'm like wrecked for 4 days. So
yes, 4 days, yeah. Man, that's good.
Yeah. So it's being more aware of that, but even something as little as decision fatigue, like how many decisions do you have to make a day? If you know that you can only make 100 really good decisions really fast, you're not going to waste your decisions on things that don't matter early in the day, and then you put your big heavy lifting items early on in the day when you're the most fresh and ready to tackle. And even if everything goes down the tubes the rest of the day, you know that you took care of like 2 or 3 really big high impact things that you needed to do early on. So I mean, man, there's so many strategies to this.
Eat your frog.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go into some tactical things, man. Let's talk about how have you remedied some of these deadline bets. Part of it is learning to say no. You've said that. Part of it is recognizing what is it that actually really matters. And the way I think about it and understand is that like once you know your end destination, I think a lot of times people will just do things because you think you're supposed to go that way. But before you even start walking anywhere, you need to be like, I need to go there. And if the more clear you can make that, if the step that you're taking is moving you closer to that endpoint, then you're fine. You might have to zig and zag a little, but at least you know where you're going or where you want to end up. Sometimes we just start walking in a direction, which I don't think is bad either. But if you can stop and think for a second about where you want to end up, maybe that's a good first step before you start to walk. Let me drop a couple comments here, or read a couple of the comments, if that's okay, Albert, and then maybe you can share some of your techniques. Yeah, yes. This is cool, man. American Mel says, hi, coming in from Colorado, no idea what's going on here. Hi, American Mel, thanks for joining. 2 guys hanging out. Nick says, love you, Huei. Love you too, Nick. Thank you very much. Josue Mencia El Jefe says, amazing advice! ! Brandon Arve, yo. Neil Andini says, yes, having more than one makes it even more challenging. I think Neil's talking about kiddos. Maybe? Timing of that. As a side note, when we were getting ready to have our second child, I remember when I would tell people, and like a couple friends who had more than one kid, like 2 kids, and what I would say was, I know that I completely underestimated what was about to happen when I had the first child. So I'm fully anticipating that I'm probably doing the same thing with the second child. What do you need to tell me now, because I know that you have more than one child, that I don't know about what's about to happen? And when I would pose that question to my friends, they would just look at me and be like, that would be it. And now I understand why when people tell me that they're having their second child, I just go, congratulations, man, that's amazing.
Yeah, 6-pack of beer. Yeah. Here you go. You're gonna need that. Yeah. And call me when you run out in an hour. Yeah. No, exactly. It's exponentially more difficult. Yeah.
Okay, so strategies. What have you figured out, or have you figured out?
Yeah. Oh, well, figured out, I don't know, but I have a strategy.
Yeah. I would say no one. You actually the one that said this, Albert. Which is let me frame what's about to happen next year. Which is, you were once telling me about how people are seeking, or maybe I was talking about this, And then you said something very just like, oh, to me, which was, and this is, let me date this. This conversation is probably 5 or 6 years ago, if I had to
Oh,
ballpark it.
okay.
So I was talking about, trying to find balance, like the work life balance between personal and work. And I don't know if you remember this, but you said, like, there is no balance, right? It's a sliding fader, and you have different seasons of work and of life, and you move back and forth. There's an ebb and flow to it. So, to think that you're going to find this perfect place where everything's just balanced all the time, that's not realistic. Do you remember saying something like that, or what has
Yeah,
that
I do,
changed?
and I still believe in
Yeah.
that. You know, um, I think that in the end, that's sort of what it is, and maybe that's the way it is for us creatives, right? Because if we have a good idea that needs to get out, like a dog with a bone, you go. You go until it's done because it may just go
Yeah.
away and it may not be all that great anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that's how I see it. If I'm in the flow and I'm doing something and it's just I don't want to stop
Right.
and if I do stop, I'm afraid it's over. Because sometimes it takes so long to get the machine cranking. And so that's also part of what plays into this, I think, and which is why I've chosen to adopt like this sliding scale.
Mm-hmm.
What I watch out for, though, are these long periods of high intensity, and I'm not allowing myself any rest. And as again, back to my therapist, and any time to heal, because even though you're doing something good and it's hard work, you are losing sleep. You're expending a high amount of mental energy. And if you think about your brain like a muscle, you can't work out 24/7 and expect to be in great shape. It just doesn't work that way. You end up hurting yourself. So, with the way that we're thinking about our own intensity and work, if you're going 24/7, 3 weeks at a time, something's going to break. Nothing is designed to do that. And so that's kind of how I look at it. But you
Sorry.
know,
The reason I'm putting my my face right now is like, I actually, what you're saying right now is so pertinent to kind of what's going on with me right now. Like, I know we've talked about it offline and what's going on, but it's just been so intense for the last 2 months on this end. And
sure.
previous to that, working in the startup when I was flying overseas once a month, and I'd be in Beijing for 10 days and then come back for 20 and then get back over there for 10. Um, it was like really bad towards the end where I was like, and it was almost like a blessing in disguise where traveling had to stop, and I was like, okay, we're grounded, and I had a period to recover and be like, oh, this is what it feels like to be a human and normal again, for a period of time. And then the last 2 months have just been going crazy. And my older brother, who's, 9 times out of 10, the words of, he's like the voice of reason. And when I've been talking to him over the last few weeks, he's like, hey, yeah, just remember, like, you got to pace yourself. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. And he's saying a lot of the things that you're saying right now. I'm just like, okay, it's just a little bit further. It's just like a little bit further. And in my mind, it's like, there's 2 more weeks. If I can just burn full throttle for 2 more weeks, then I can, like, let up a little bit and breathe. But, you know, maybe something's going to break before the end of the month if I don't do something now. I feel okay. I feel like I'm fine. I just need to be
Yeah,
aware of it.
well, I mean, I hope that you are. I
Yeah.
hope that you are. I mean, and if you can't stop, maybe one of the things that you can do is to give yourself permission for a pre-prescribed amount of time to not think about the thing that is your project. Maybe that's what's required then, because like there, I think of people who are air traffic controllers and the amount of stress that they're under and trying to get the planes to land. Like an air traffic controller in the Atlanta airport at JFK, I mean, that is a high volume of work, right? And maybe now there's a lot of computer stuff to help, but like, when I remember hearing about these stories about air traffic controllers in the 1980s and early 1990s, where they literally would have to just stop for a moment and stare at a fish tank because it was calm, to sort of unlock their brain before they can go back at it and do it again. I mean, you call it wrong, thousands of people die, right? And so that's a different kind of pressure. And then so like applying that to what you're going through right now, um, could be scheduling your brain off time. You know, you're clearly good at keeping a schedule, and maybe you're like, I'm on for 4 hours, but after a 4 hour block or a 3 hour block, there is 1 hour where I do nothing. I do not answer the phone if it has to do with work. I do not respond to an email. I do something that is diametrically opposed to whatever it is that I was doing, to allow my brain to like stretch back out again. And luckily, you know, you've got a kid, two
Yep.
kids, and it could be just that. It could be go for a walk for an hour. And it's so easier said than done. I mean, I think you have to train yourself to compartmentalize to be able to do that. And that's exactly what I'm saying. Is to get to a place where you're drawing your own mental boundaries to allow yourself um, little siestas within the day. If you can't take a 2 week vacation in the middle of the project that you're going, and maybe in the end, that's the healthier thing to do anyway, because that's more sustainable, right? Um, yeah.
I think as I'm listening to you describe, I haven't been thinking of it this way, but it's kind of been happening where, because we do have the good fortune of having little children, you know, like we do have our routine of you do the dinner thing, we go out for our evening walk and bike riding or rollerblading, and we come back and we do bath. And so uh, you just have things that are built into your daily routine that end up being those siestas from the barrage of what is happening during the day. So, but
Yeah.
maybe if I think of it that way, also, it's like, okay, this is the part where you stop thinking about that thing you were thinking about earlier, and you just, you know, like I've been thinking about trying to be more present in the moment, which is always a thing,
Mm-hmm.
also, right? So it's just like, okay, stop working on that thing in the background of your brain while this other thing's happening. Just be
Mm-hmm.
here, and if something's on fire, it's only going to be on fire for 45 minutes. So just you're fine. Just chill for 45.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, and the thing is, if you're afraid that you can't pick up where you left off, I mean, I know you journal, I know you carry a notebook, write down where you left off. Give yourself the assignment of where to pick up again once you go. So now no mental energy expended at all. You literally cut the cord, you write down where you were, walk away, go back. Oh, that's where I was. Pick right back up and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's, you know, I've joined the cult of bullet journals, you know,
Oh yeah.
and journalists.
Tell us about that.
And that's kind of one of the things that has become really useful is to, a strategy that I have developed now is realizing how many times this journal logging and all of the things that I do associated with, you know, that method of detailing your day and scheduling your day and writing down and goal planning, et cetera, et cetera. Um, the system has a way of forcing you to evaluate what you do because you rewrite what it is that you didn't get done. And so in the act of rewriting, you evaluate the importance of that thing. And and more also equally important is whether or not you should be doing that thing then or you should do that thing later.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you continually write it down and it's not done just nags at you until you do it. Like right now, the thing that I'm writing down consistently and still haven't touched is to retarp my flower beds. I rewrite it. I've rewritten it for a month. I should just schedule it because I know that I'm not going to have any time to get
Yeah.
to it until the end of
Yeah.
September. So I should
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
schedule
And you
it
have to write it down anymore. You
for,
just know it's happening over there.
yeah,
Yeah.
because when it's time to review,
Yep.
right? When I get to September, my month spread for September, I know, oh yeah, I said that I was going to do the flower beds here. Okay, well, now I'll add it.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me, that's been a really big tool. My my brain is not neatly organized. And I need something physical to help me do it. And I'm mad that it's taken me this long to discover that, to admit that to myself. I think I've always known that I'm kind of a sloppy person. But I finally admitted it and, took matters in my own hands to try to find a way to fix it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think one of the things that I'm hearing from when you're describing it too is that you're raising your awareness to where time is getting spent, how you're budgeting the time. You thought this was going to happen. This is what actually happened. And as you close the gap between what you think is going to happen and what actually happens, you get better at just estimating what it is the first time. Kind of like your photography analogy. Like you used to have to take a bunch of photos, and then now when you take the photo, it ends up being what you thought you were taking when you took it. Because you've done that review process over and over and over again. But you have to go through that process in order to develop that level of awareness and accuracy in what you're estimating.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, to take it full circle, that's probably why as undergrads we had to do everything. It's like, what are you actually capable of? How much are you actually capable of handling? Where are your interests, and do your talents align with your interests, align with your willingness to put yourself through the thing, that's going to result in whatever it is that you wanted. Like there's, in short, what kind of shit sandwich do you want to eat? Because it's going to be there. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you enjoy it, you're going to eat some shit sandwiches. So which ones do you want?
What is the part of this analogy? Are you talking about like the shit sandwiches that you're making for yourself, or that other people are making for you?
Well, you know what? It could be both. It could be both. If you're really, really super ambitious, both people will be making for yourself.
Well, I said that jokingly, but there's a big part of that, which is setting it up so that you're not having to deal with other people's shit sandwiches, like setting up the infrastructure where it doesn't happen, and that comes with time and who you surround yourself with, and, getting better at communicating and pledging time. When you initially proposed this topic, I mean, there's like a lot of things, and last week's talk I thought was so great. Just kind of you gave like one big broad perspective. I was like, oh man, that was good. I couldn't think of one for this topic this week. But what I think has happened is that when it comes to setting realistic deadlines, there are a lot of like little strategic things that I've learned over time that in summation, they end up doing a lot of like good for me overall. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like, it is a lot of little tactical strategy things. And I would also say that it's something that can be learned. As anything else, it's not like I'm good at sight reading or I'm not good at sight reading. Guess what? It's a skill. If you practice it, you'll get better at it. If you want to have good awareness of setting goals and like doing the things that are on your list and there's no right or wrong answer, you just have to find the strategies that work best for you. Once you get better at finding those things, then it's a skill. You get better at it as you do it.
Yeah, I agree. And you can't replace that with time. That's all part of it, I think. You can learn from other people's experiences, don't get me wrong. But there's still a lot that you have to learn on your own, I think, for sure. Yeah. You know what's interesting is this particular meet unfolds just like our normal conversations.
Yeah, it's kind of meandering. We start on one thing and then
Right.
we kind of make our way back. To where we started eventually at the end.
Yeah.
I do have like a few little things that might be helpful to people, because if they tune in, they see the title and they're like, setting those. I was like, hey, they didn't talk about anything that was realistic. I think my video is frozen too. Real quick, let me see if I can stop it and start it. If it'll come back.
Yeah, mine is too. Well,
Let me see. I think my camera is revolting, saying no. Oh, that might be the end of my feed. Maybe we're getting the Apollo clowns coming out and saying like, no, that's it. My video feed has
we got bumped.
You might have to do the sign off here, Albert. Okay, I'm gonna keep going real quick.
Oh no!
I would say let me try unplugging my camera and plugging it in real quick, but that's probably that might bloat some. That temporarily works. Sometimes will work temporarily.
Yeah. Hey, no.
Let's experiment here.
We've been on here for over an hour.
Yeah, I think we're getting that. We're hitting that mark here.
So much for our deadline for 30 minutes.
Oh yeah, maybe we're the we're demonstrating the topic of the conversation in real time. And actually that fits perfectly in what I was about to say, which is when you first start setting these deadlines, what I've come to do is that I think of how much time I think it's going to take me, and then I just double it. That's my starting point, like almost always for everything. If I think it's going to take me a week, I just budget 2 weeks of time. And this is coming from, like basically what I've been doing for the last 2 years is project management, or like, okay, I think here's a thing. Let me take this big idea and break it up into a lot of small pieces. I want to end up here. Let me work backwards. Well, if I want to hit that date, then I need to hit this date. If I want to hit that date, then I need to hit this date, and you just kind of work your way back. And because I've just been doing it so much, I've gotten actually pretty good about it, because when I plan it, I'm not planning to arrive at the gate 10 minutes beforehand. I'm building in all that buffer time of like, okay, if something goes wrong, we've got 3 extra days. I need to be here, but really if we extend 4 days beyond that, we'll still be fine because we'll hit this other deadline. So just getting better at it. And the first strategy is just like, whatever you think it's going to take, just double that amount. And then if you end up early, great. If you miss it and you have to go a little bit longer, good job. You gave yourself 2 times the amount of time that you thought you needed. So that might be a good first step for people if they're trying to figure this out.
Dude, that's an amazing first step. I never dawned on me to even consider that. Done. I'm doubling everything. But seriously, I'm like, what the hell, man? So simple.
So the Wind Ensemble on Wednesday say, all right, guys, instead of 2-hour rehearsals now, we're going to be having 4-hour rehearsals. Congratulations.
You can, when we meet with our friend Huei, you can blame him for that.
How long do you is a typical large ensemble rehearsal? Is it 2 or 3 hours?
We have a 2-hour rehearsal.
2 hours.
Our cycle will be between 7 to 9, maybe 11 rehearsals per concert. 6 being the shortest, and that was almost crazy. I don't like more than 12. I think after that, it's like, oh. After that, the music, it's because the music was either way too hard or way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that perfect little balance. Well, what was that? The only one? You got another tip? That was a huge one.
Really? I have like a laundry list of these, man. Because I gotta say that trying to become an efficiency machine. Okay, this is kind of how, I don't know if I've ever said this out loud. What happens is I'll pick like a thing, and I will deep dive on that thing until I feel like I've got like a really, I'm like 80% of the way there on it, and then I'll move on to like the next thing. An example of this is, we talked about this a little bit in maybe the first episode, where you said that I seemed a little bit older than maybe what you thought I would be. And there was this, like my junior, senior year, like I'm in the wind ensemble with all these graduate students. I'm just like, man, this feels a lot different than when you were, in high school band or something like that. It's like, why does it feel so different? And then, I remember the setup too. It's like, Ben Finley sitting next to me playing timpani, Chris Carrillo's playing trumpet in front of me, Jerry Junkins on the podium. I'm just like, what is going on? It's like, this is the big times. And I posed a question to myself, which was, you know, like when you're in an ensemble and as you learn how the piece comes together, there are certain players, people you've never talked to in the ensemble, but there are just certain players in the ensemble that you like, I know that guy is going to come in when he's supposed to, or that lady is like a 10 out of 10, and you know who you can rely on, who you can trust, who's like a little bit shaky that you just need to, you know, do your part. And then the next question was like, how do I become one of those people that is the unspoken, you know, linchpin in the ensemble that people know that xylophone part is going to come in on time. People know that that snare part is not going to drag. How do you become that professional person in the ensemble? It's unspoken. No one said like, "Hey, I'm the professional here. Everyone, trust me."
You're right.
It's
You're right.
just
You're right.
it happens from rehearsing together. So an example of this was I went on a deep dive. I was like, what does it mean to be a professional? And so then I started like reading books and talking to people and asking advice of people who I thought were professional. Like, how did you become professional? You know, and I did that for a long time. And I think, you know, by junior, senior, it took me another 5, maybe 10 years to get to the point where I'm like pretty confident, or not confident. I think I know I've experienced enough professionalism and unprofessionalism to recognize my awareness for it is very high, I think. Similarly, this efficiency thing, setting deadlines, is something that I struggled with, because I'm also the same way too, where it's like I'm a procrastinator by nature. I will, you know, I was the guy that would wait till the night before to write the paper, or, you know, I just knew annually that when I did science fair in high school, that meant I would get home from marching band at 6 and then buy a 3-fold, you know, foam board thing, and then work after dinner until 7 a.m. the next morning when I had to go to school to turn it in. That was just like, for 4 years, that's literally what I did. And then hindsight, I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, what is wrong with you? But with this sense of like planning, you realize that the more you plan, the more free time you have, because you're not having to kind of react in the moment. So then you have clarity of like to be able to think and then to be like, okay, and like, you know, we've talked about this too. It's the whole time thing. Why did I go down the whole route of trying to, you know, create these assets that would essentially double my time, or I wouldn't have to trade time for dollars? It's because I was trying to get my time back. And so planning, organizing, setting time. Okay, here's like a little tip. I remember when I was reading about, okay, and you know, it's getting late in the day, so the term is escaping me now, but it's basically like the idea is when you have to, I think it falls under executive function, cognitive flexibility, but if you're having to switch between tasks, similar to that decision fatigue, most people, or many people, think that they're good at multitasking, but like very few, if anyone, is actually good at multitasking. Every time you have to switch between this task and that task, it's like electricity going over a cord. You're losing a little bit the further that travels. Every time you switch, you lose a little bit of efficiency. So it's better to just choose one thing and drill on it as hard as you can for an amount of time, let's say 30 minutes or 60 minutes. You just crank on it, and then at the end of that time, that's where you make it. If you think that you're actually getting more done because you're like stopping to check your email and you're doing this, like I know if you walk down any music school hallway and you see people in the practice rooms and they're practicing and they've got their computer out and they're checking their phone, it's like, that is not, I don't even have to hear what's going on. I can see that is not a productive practice session. You know, like whatever you end up doing, just be blinders on, laser beam focused for that amount of time. And the less switching you can do, the more efficiency, the more output you're going to get at the end of that 30-minute or 60-minute chunk.
Yeah. It's pretty good, man. I like your rabbit holes.
Thanks, man. Sorry, I went down a little bit. If I added
No, no,
one,
no. I mean, I like the fact that that's what you do. I'm not saying that your comments were a rabbit hole.
oh, I see,
That's
I
not
see.
what I mean by
That like
that.
I choose a thing and then go down the rabbit hole of that thing.
Yeah,
I got you.
it's just
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and it's deliberate. You know, I think that's the difference. It's like there are people who will sort of allow life to curate that experience for them. Um, but really successful people are doing what you do, is the decisions are goal oriented and they're hyper focused, um, and every decision is evaluated, you know, instead of go over here, which I think is my natural state, is to like be ADD about it, you know, not that I am, uh, I don't think, but I dabble too much. And as a kid, that was my problem. Is the horn player dabbles all the time and never really does anything well. That's kind of where I was, and I just got tired of not being really good at something.
Mm.
So then I focused.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
It's tough though because there is the two sides of the coin, and you can do two extremes because I'll say another. I don't know if this is a strategy or habit that I've tried to foster is that when I have those sparks of inspiration, when I get an idea for something, I don't say like, "Oh, I'll try that later." Like if I get an idea and I think it's a good idea, like I'll take 30 minutes and just do it. I'll just execute the idea because I know that if I don't make it happen in that moment, it's going to, you know, dissipate into the ether and it's gone. It won't
Hmm.
happen. Um,
And if you're able to at least recall it, it won't be as clear. It won't be as vibrant.
yeah, you know, like your enthusiasm and fire for a thing in that moment is very hard to predict. Like, is it going to come back? And if you're like, yeah, this is a thing, I'm gonna do this, and you know, bless my wife, she is very understanding of this because sometimes I'll just say like, okay, the first time I did my very first live stream was this. We were coming back from grocery shopping, and I'd been just like watching some periscopes and going like, okay, this is like a thing. This is like a, you know, it's like Meerkat, and I keep hearing about it in the podcasts, and people are live streaming, and okay, and the audience is, and I'm watching some of these live streams, and it's mostly in the music niche of things. It's like kids getting on and practicing terribly, you know, for 45 minutes and like talking to people as they practice. I'm just like, oh god, this is. I feel like if I were to get on, I could help these people. You know, I could say like, you could try this, you could do this, and anyway, I'd been thinking about it for a while. We were coming back from the grocery store, and I remember it's like a very short drive in LA where we were living at the time. It was like literally a 7 minute drive, and from the time we left the parking lot to go home, I was like, you know, I think I know the format of how I would do my live stream. I know what I would do it. The first thing I would do would be this topic because it's very broad and it would help a lot of people. Um, okay, and then like literally as soon as we pulled in, I was like, hey, I have an idea. I have to disappear for like 45 minutes, and she's like, yeah, okay. Like she just knows that this happens to me, and and so like I walk. We unloaded groceries. I walked straight in, grabbed a pad, grabbed some sticks, went outside, took out the phone, and like there was no like, should I do it? I was just like, literally, I have 45 minutes. Boom, turn it on. Okay, hey, what's up, everyone? Da, da, da. First live stream, and that was the seed into like my first free handout, which became the seed to like the first volume of my marching percussion playbook, which volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 later I compounded together, which became my first digital product, which then became my first physical shipping product, which became, you know, all this other stuff because of that one little idea that I got on the way back from the grocery store.
That's awesome. Can you imagine where you'd be if you didn't take the 45 minutes to do that?
Yes, yes, because I did that a lot growing
Yeah.
up.
Can you remember this? I want you to talk to this about my students.
What that?
The
What we just talked about?
this, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
and I'm gonna try to remember to ask you about it. But like the idea of, again, it's a dog with a bone, you know, and it just has to happen, and then it grew into this other thing. But it would not have turned into this other thing if you weren't disciplined enough, and if you didn't learn enough to recognize what a good idea was. You would not have spent the 45 minutes if you thought that it was a bad idea, or if it was a whimsical thing that you just wanted to explore. Your training, your education, your awareness all pointed to the fact that this was a solid idea and you had to work it out. Don't you think?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because when I finally decided to pull the trigger on it, there was no like, oh, I hope I play this correctly, or I hope I know how to explain this. All that honing preparation stuff. Sorry, I'm like frozen over here. All that preparation stuff happened well before that, and the only thing I'm having to worry about at that point is the technology. It's like, okay, do I know how to start the
Mm-hmm.
live stream? Do I know how to, speak on camera? And at that point, I'd already shot a few vlogs, so that was preparing for that bit. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
maybe it's the whole preparation meets opportunity, luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Completely.
and I realized as we're talking about this too, it's like we just said, hey, be laser beam focused, don't do other things, and then at the same breath, I was like, yeah, but when you have a good idea, don't be afraid to to not look
No,
at your
well,
list and just do the thing.
right, right,
So
right.
there's no like absolutes. It's this or it's this. You have different tools. You have different knives for a reason. You got your paring knife, you got your chef's knife. Different scenario. Different rules are made to be broken, but you got to know the
That is,
rules. Maybe.
yeah. That's what's hard about, conversations like this and uh, the fix it rules, the guides to be better at. We're just too different. Um, and well, maybe humans aren't as different as we think we are, but the scenarios that we encounter uh, are colored so differently. Um, and I think it does take experience and understanding to know what the next step should be. Because, I mean, if you would not have taken that 45 minutes if you had a 9-month old that needed to be fed and
That's
changed.
true. That's totally
You
true.
wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Um, but, things aligned, allowing you to make that happen. Yeah.
Yep. Well, hey man, we've crossed the 1 hour mark, and I could easily do the next hour with you
Woo.
for sure. I can already I know where that
Yeah,
conversation
man.
would go,
Likewise.
but technology is revolting. I'm shocked that the children have not
Yeah,
started
it's
revolting
weird.
yet. So anyway, that might be our cue. Um, but
Yeah.
dude, this was fun as usual, and thanks to
Yeah.
everyone who threw in a comment this week. I'm supposed to propose a topic next week. So if you have a good idea for something that you'd like us to speak on,
I,
please let us know. You have an idea?
yeah. Let's see if we can get people to generate some comments,
Yeah. All right.
topics.
All right. So setting a deadline. Um, well, we kind of did it. I would say the last thing I would maybe throw out, not to give more tips, but like I should probably write this down. Okay. See, like the little bubbles are percolating in the back of my head now. It's like this is a blog post, right? You start making a list of these. I could probably come up with 10 pretty quick, and then I just choose the top 5 and I write like a little
Hmm.
thing about it. Maybe that's a video idea, and
Hmm.
you got to get it down somehow. But
Hmm.
the scheduling thing, that has been a game changer for me. Where if I look at my calendar and I just see the little blocks of time, whether it's a 30-minute block or a 60-minute block or a 45-minute block or a 15-minute block, and you've got your tasks, and you just, it's like, okay, that's a 45-minute thing, that's a 60-minute thing, that's a 15-minute thing, and then you just slot it and you put it in the calendar. Okay, here's the big tip. I spend very little time thinking about what I'm supposed to do next. The only time I do that is at the end of the day before the next day starts. So at the end of the day, before I go to sleep, I'll look at my calendar for the next day and I'll be like, okay, that's lined up, that's lined up, that's lined up. And most, like 70% of that stuff has already been scheduled in advance, including the big chunks of time that are empty, that I know that I'm going to slot like those 2 or 3 big things that I've been kind of waiting to knock out on that certain day. So when the day actually starts, very rarely, if any, time is spent like, what am I supposed to do next? It's either scheduled or I've got the list and I just look at the list, and if I do the next thing on the list, it's already prioritized, and if I do that next thing, then I'm on the right track. So separating the figuring out and the doing, that's a big one for me.
Technology problems. I think you finished talking.
Sorry, did any of that audio come through? The video was going, but going crazy. Sorry. It was really good advice. I think that's our cue, man.
Yeah.
I think that's our cue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think we have to shut
It was
down.
such a good piece of good advice too. So, all right, I'll write a blog post. That's the cue. That's
Well, I mean, maybe everyone else heard it. I heard something about scheduling and blocking and I tried really hard, man.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
It comes down to is separating the figuring out what I'm supposed to be doing from the actual doing. What I'm gonna do is planned out beforehand. So, all right, Albert.
Well, maybe next time you can help me understand how to handle the interruptions of your schedule.
Yep. I actually have a couple things for that
That's
too.
a big one.
I mean, dude, it's impossible.
Yeah,
You're
okay.
gonna have things. We get children. It's inevitable. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, should we wrap it?
Let's wrap it.
All right. Good hang, man. I'll see you same time next week.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks for the therapy session.
Same time next week. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I will say that, our conversations linger throughout the week with me.
They do too. Yeah,
Like
I agree. This is a good thing. If other people aren't getting anything out of this, it certainly helps me a lot.
yeah, likewise.
Especially today being, our first day of virtual teaching. This has been really nice.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I'm sure you were super tired with a full day of teaching, so get some rest. Thanks again for the conversation, and I'll see you next week.
Will do.
Okay. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you later. Have a good night.
Farewell, sir.
Bye.